My name is Clara Mitchell, 32 years old, living in Tampa, Florida. For nearly 10 years, I worked relentlessly to finally own a beachside condo of my own. Others might see it as something ordinary, but for me, it symbolized all the patience, sacrifice, and determination I had poured into my life. While my friends enjoyed trips to Europe, I took night shifts at the hospital. When coworkers saved up for new cars, I kept driving my old Honda Civic, nearly 10 years on the road as long as it still started and got me to work on time. I learned to cook simple meals instead of ordering takeout, and every dollar I saved went straight into the account reserved for my ultimate goal, a dream condo on Clearwater Beach. There were nights when I left my shift drenched in sweat, drove straight to the waterfront, and parked in front of rows of white buildings with balconies facing the ocean. I would sit there for hours, imagining myself unlocking the door, sitting by the window watching the waves roll in. That vision was the only thing that kept me from collapsing under the weight of exhaustion. By the time I turned 30, I had saved enough for the down payment. On the day I signed the purchase contract, my hands trembled, but my heart beat with a joy I had never felt before. Unit 407, on the 4th floor of a white building with a teal roof, became my home. Just about 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a balcony looking directly at the ocean, but to me it was more than a condo. It was proof that I could stand on my own without leaning on anyone. The first time I walked inside, I took a deep breath. The scent of fresh paint mixed with the salt air seeped into every corner. The glass doors opened to the balcony, where the breeze swept in, waves crashing below, glowing in the sunset. I cried. Not from fatigue, but because I finally had a place I could call mine. I remember then my mother, Diana, just shrugged. Why buy a condo, daughter? Waste of money. If you waited a few more years, you could help the family instead. My father, Howard, was no different. He nodded, voice cold. Instead of pouring all that money into a tiny box, why not give it to your brother to invest? He knows how to handle things better. And my brother, Mason, snorted, that little condo? It's just for showing off. Those words hit me like a bucket of ice water. But I didn't respond. I only looked at the key in my hand and told myself, this is my work, no one has the right to belittle it. Every weekend I decorated the condo myself. Walls painted a soft cream, sheer white curtains like clouds, bookshelves stacked with novels I loved. I bought a blue sofa and set it in the middle of the living room, facing the large window so I could watch the sunrise every morning. Each evening I lit lavender candles so the air filled with a calm fragrance, pushing away the day's stress. I never called it just a place to live. For me, it was my sanctuary where I could finally be myself without judgment or comparison. On some nights, I sat alone on the balcony holding a cheap glass of wine from the grocery store, yet I felt richer than ever. The city of Tampa roared outside, but once I shut the glass doors, there was only the sound of the waves and the rhythm of my heartbeat. I whispered to myself, Clara, you did it. This is your home. No one can take it away. One May afternoon, after a 12-hour hospital shift, I drove straight to my beachside condo. I carried bags filled with fresh groceries, planning to try a few new recipes that weekend and enjoy the sea breeze on my balcony. But as soon as I pulled into the lot, my heart sank. I saw a familiar figure at the entrance. My mother, Diana, stood there with her arms crossed, her face cold and nothing like the gentle mask she usually wore for the neighbors. I walked up the tiled steps, forcing a polite smile. Mom, what are you doing here? I didn't tell you I was coming. Diana didn't answer right away. She locked eyes with me, filled with contempt, then dropped the words heavy as stones. This isn't your condo anymore, Clara. It belongs to Mason now. I froze, nearly dropping the grocery bags from my hands. What are you talking about? This is my home, under my name, paid with my money. At that moment, the door swung open. My father, Howard, stepped out, and behind him stood Mason, my 35-year-old brother. His hair was a mess, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. He leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Surprised, little sister? This place is mine now. My pulse pounded, my face burning hot. No, that's not possible. Howard didn't even glance at me. His gravelly voice cut through the air. We signed the paperwork. From now on, Mason lives here. He needs a stable home. You can take care of yourself, Clara. A bitter laugh escaped me. Take care of myself? Do you have any idea how hard I've worked, how much I've sacrificed to buy this place? Every cent came from my sweat and sleepless nights. Mason stepped closer, dangling a key in front of me. You did well, but too bad. Mom and Dad think I need it more. You're still young, still strong. Me? I've got nothing left. Because you burned through everything on drugs and gambling. I shouted, my voice breaking. I've bailed you out of debt, even covered your hospital bills. And this is how you repay me? Mason shrugged, his smirk dripping with defiance. That's what family is for, sis. Diana cut in, her tone sharp as steel. Enough. The decision's been made. You're a doctor, you earn good money, you'll be fine. Mason deserves support. You should learn to sacrifice. I stood stunned. I'd lived my whole life under their favoritism, but never had they stolen from me so blatantly. Dropping the bags onto the floor, I glared at them, eyes blazing. This condo is under my name. No one can transfer it without my signature. Howard stepped forward, looking at me like I was a stranger. Did you forget? When you were 25 and had that surgery, you signed a power of attorney so I could handle your bills. I used that to sign. Perfectly legal. My chest tightened. Memories flashed. Appendicitis complications, nearly a month in the hospital signing papers my father had pushed in front of me. I never imagined that, 7 years later, the very document would be the rope tightening around my neck. You exploited me. My voice trembled. That isn't legal, that's betrayal. Howard said nothing. He turned his back as if the matter was closed. Mason clapped mockingly, his voice smug. Face it, Clara. You're strong, you'll be fine. But me. Now I've finally got a place to call home. The ground felt like it was collapsing beneath me. My sanctuary, my symbol of freedom, had been twisted into their power play. Shame burned in my throat, but I refused to cry. I drew in a deep breath, clenched my fists, and stepped back down the stairs. Fine. My voice was low, cold, sharp as a blade. If that's what you've chosen, I'll remember it. I turned and walked away, each step etching a vow deeper into my heart. I would not stay silent. I would not let this condo become Mason's prize or the reward for my parents' blind favoritism. They thought I would surrender, but they would soon learn my patience was gone. The light hit my face and my eyes no longer wavered. Inside me, a plan had just begun to take shape. That night, in my small rented apartment downtown, I sat frozen at the kitchen table, the room drenched in dim yellow light. Beside me was an old metal lockbox I hadn't opened in years. Outside, the roar of traffic from the Tampa highway couldn't drown out the pounding of my heart. Howard's words from earlier that day kept replaying. You signed power of attorney for me. I only used it. Anger ignited into a fire inside my chest. If my father had abused that old document, then surely I had a way to fight back. I drew a deep breath, unlocked the box, and pulled out stacks of documents I'd kept from past agreements. Insurance contracts, tax returns, bank slips. My trembling hands sifted through until a thin bundle slid free. Across the top, power of attorney agreement. Date signed 8 years ago. The memory snapped clear. I was 24, fresh out of a complicated appendectomy, still groggy in recovery. Howard told me he needed my signature to settle bills. Half conscious, I scribbled it without thought, eager just to rest. I never imagined he would keep it, sharpen it like a hidden dagger, and one day stab me in the back. I leaned into the chair, head spinning. The document spelled it out. Valid for only 6 months after surgery. Then how had Howard used it to transfer a condo purchased years later? I circled the line with a highlighter. Valid for 6 months. My chest tightened, but a flicker of hope sparked. They had either blundered or deliberately crossed the line. I opened my laptop, logged into Pinellas County's property records portal. A few clicks and the truth glared back. My name replaced with Mason Mitchell, transfer date 2 months earlier. Under authorized by power of attorney, clear as day, Howard Mitchell. My grip on the mouse turned my knuckles white. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had forged authority that no longer existed. My phone buzzed. Mom's number. I hesitated, then answered. Clara, are you still planning to make a fuss? Diana's voice was icy. Mom, you know that document expired after 6 months. I never agreed to sell or gift the condo. You know that. Her laugh was sharp, cutting into my ear. In this family, legal or not doesn't matter. What matters is Mason needs a home. You'll always land on your feet. Don't be selfish. I bit my lip until I tasted blood but kept my voice even. If you've chosen to trample me just to protect Mason, then get ready. I won't stay silent. I hung up, my breath ragged. My body shook, part fury, part resolve. The words danced in my vision. Fraudulent transfer, unauthorized. I knew what I had to do. I dug out an old contact, attorney Amy Collins, who once worked with me when the hospital faced a civil suit. Amy, in her 40s, sharp, relentless, known for tearing apart fraud cases. I opened my email and typed fast. Amy, I need your help. My family stole my condo using an expired power of attorney. Can we meet this week? Clara. My chest loosened just a little. But sleep never came. I wandered my tiny rental, moonlight spilling across the cold wood floor. Mason's face haunted me, creased with worry, eyes bloodshot, debts chasing him like a shadow without end. Then Howard, the man who taught me to ride a bike, now wielding my signature as a weapon. And Diana, who never shielded me, only repeating, "Mason is the family's hope." A memory from years ago surfaced. I was 17, awarded a full scholarship to the University of Florida. I rushed home, desperate for their embrace. Howard only said, "Scholarships are fine, but Mason needs a new car to get to work. Can you give up some of your funds to help him?" That day I stayed quiet, swallowed the hurt. And from then on I learned silence. But not this time. This was my blood, my sweat, not a gift for them to plunder. Around 3 a.m. I spread the documents across the table. I listed everything: proof of the expired power of attorney, original deed, bank transfers. I marked every date, every detail. Each note felt like a blade carving my resolve deeper. I will take it all back. Outside, waves crashed faintly in the distance. I gave a bitter smile. That condo had once been my dream. Now it was a battlefield. And I, Clara Mitchell, was ready for war. I arranged to meet Amy Collins at a small cafe in downtown Tampa. The woman in her 40s walked in carrying a thick file, her brown hair neatly tied back, her eyes sharp behind thin glasses. After hearing my entire story, she shook her head, her voice dry. "Clara, they broke the law. But to win in court we need hard evidence. Not just papers but words, actions. If they admit it on camera, that's even better." I nodded, nerves and determination twisting inside me. The thought struck hard. If Diana, Howard, and Mason truly believed I'd stay silent, then their arrogance would be their trap. A few days later, I went back to the condo under the pretense of collecting some personal items. I carried a small bag, inside it hidden a palm-sized camera and a phone with a recorder app running. No one paid much attention as I climbed to the 4th floor, my heart racing. The door opened. Mason appeared first. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt, a beer can in hand. Seeing me, he smirked. "Well, little sister missed home?" Diana sat stiffly in the living room, her hair curled tight, her eyes sharp. She didn't invite me in, just jerked her chin. "Get your things quickly. Don't wander around. This is Mason's home now." Swallowing my rage, I stepped inside, setting my bag on a chair. While pretending to gather photo frames, I slid the tiny camera onto the bookshelf among the clutter. Its lens aimed straight at the living room where Diana and Mason sat. Howard came out of the kitchen with a newspaper in hand, his voice smug. "Why are you even here?" "Silver Claire." "Accept it." I gave a cold laugh, just enough to provoke. "So you're proud of stealing your daughter's condo and handing it to a man drowning in debt?" Mason burst out laughing, setting his beer can down with a clink. "Exactly. I need it more. You can live anywhere. Your condo was just a temporary prize. Now it's mine." Howard nodded along while Diana sneered. "You always thought you were independent, capable. But in the end, family will always put Mason first. He's the one we count on. You're just convenient." Each word pierced like a blade, but outwardly I stayed calm. My phone recorded every second from inside my purse as I asked coolly, "And when Mason can't pay his debts, what will you take from me next?" Mason waved lazily, his voice slurred. "Don't worry. Whatever you own will end up mine anyway. You make money so I can spend it, got it?" Diana chuckled softly, not even bothering to hide her agreement. Howard stayed quiet, but the pride in his eyes said it all. I pretended to finish packing a few keepsakes, then turned to leave. At the door I tossed back one line: "Enjoy it while you can. I'll remember every word today." They thought it was nothing more than bitter spite and laughed loudly behind me. But on that tiny camera the entire truth was captured. Back at my rental, I shut the door tight and pulled out the device. My heart thudded as crisp footage lit the screen. Diana perched on the chair, Mason smirking, Howard nodding. Their voices rang clear, every word undeniable evidence. I replayed it again and again. Mason's arrogant tone, "You make money so I can spend it." Diana's icy sneer, "You're just convenient." I shivered, yet relief washed over me. At last, their lifelong contempt had been exposed. I saved the files onto 3 separate drives. One locked in my safe, one sent straight to Amy, one uploaded to the cloud. I couldn't afford a single mistake. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was war, and I would make sure they couldn't escape the truth. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat in my small apartment overlooking the bright Tampa skyline. Never had I felt so bitter, but never had I felt so powerful. I knew it was time to confront them directly. The evidence in my hands was strong enough to destroy every excuse they had. But before bringing it to court, I wanted to give them one last chance. Not out of pity, out of resolve. I needed to look them in the eye, to let them hear that I would never stay silent again. That evening, I drove to my parents' old house in the Clearwater suburbs. The 2-story white home with a blue porch light still glowed as it always had. I stood at the door for a long breath before pressing the bell. Diana opened it, startled for a moment, then her face hardened. "What trouble are you here to cause now, Clara?" she asked, her voice sharp as needles. "I need to speak to all of you." My reply was firm. Inside the dining room, Howard sat at the head of the table, Mason slouched in a chair spinning a beer can. All 3 looked at me like I was an intruder. The air was so heavy I could hear the wall clock ticking. I set my bag down, stared straight at them, and spoke clearly. "You have 7 days to leave my condo. After that, the next time we meet will be in court." Mason burst into laughter, slapping the table until his beer rolled onto the floor. "Listen to this. My little sister now thinks she can sue her own family. Claire, you're delusional." Howard's face darkened. He slammed his hand against the wooden table. "You dare say that in my house? Everything you have came from this family. And now you want to kick out your own brother?" I kept my calm, locking eyes with him. "No. Everything I have came from working myself to exhaustion for 10 years. I paid for that condo every cent. Not one of you contributed a dime." Diana let out a shrill laugh, her voice dripping with contempt. "Don't act like you're some saint. Without Mason, you'd never have learned resilience. We always had to give him more love because he needed it. You've only ever been petty and jealous." The words scorched through me like fire. "Love." I spat each word. "If blind favoritism and outright betrayal are what you call love, then I don't want it." Mason clapped mockingly, like applauding a play. "Nice speech, Clara. But listen carefully, I'm not leaving. This is my house now. You can cry, you can scream, but in the end I stay." I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick folder, and dropped it on the table with a thud. I recorded everything. Mason bragging that my money only exists for him to spend. Mother calling me nothing but convenient. And father signing over my condo with an expired power of attorney. I have video, audio, and documents. Who do you think the court will believe? The room fell silent for a beat. Diana's face flickered, but she quickly straightened, her tone sharp as glass. "Threatening your own parents? Shameful. No judge will believe you. You always lose, Claire." Howard clenched his fists, his face red. "Ungrateful. After everything I've done, you'd choose the law over family?" I looked at each of them in turn, letting the silence stretch until Mason twitched and tapped his foot. Then I spoke slowly, my voice low and hard as steel. "This isn't a threat. It's a promise. 7 days. After that, I won't speak with words anymore. I'll speak with the law." I picked up my bag and turned for the door. Behind me, Mason cursed under his breath, Diana shrieked, and Howard pounded the table. But I didn't look back. I opened the door, stepped out, and let the cool night air hit my face. My heart pounded fast but steady. Driving back through Tampa's glowing skyline, I knew I had entered the most decisive phase of my life. The 7th day dragged on as if each hour stretched into a full day. I marked it in bold red on my calendar, the deadline. All week I hadn't heard a word from Diana or Howard. Mason didn't bother to send a single text. Their silence wasn't surrender, it was arrogance. On the morning of the 8th day, I sat in my car parked by Clearwater Beach, watching my condo Unit 407 from a distance. The Gulf breeze carried the sting of salt. A black SUV pulled up to the front entrance. Two Pinellas County deputies stepped out with a court officer. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, my heart pounding but my eyes steady. This was the moment I had waited for. They knocked. Diana appeared, draped in a red silk robe, her face wrinkling at the sight of the badges. "What do you want?" she snapped. "Ma'am, by order of the Pinellas County Court, you and the occupants of this residence must vacate immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings," the officer announced firmly. Mason appeared behind her, bloodshot eyes, hair wild, cigarette in hand. He cursed, flicking it to the floor. Howard stormed forward, face flushed, shouting, "This is my son's house. You have no right." The deputy's voice was calm, unshaken. "The legal owner is Clara Mitchell. We have documents to prove it. If you refuse to comply, we will enforce removal." Diana whirled around and screamed back into the condo. "Clara, you're behind this, aren't you? You dare use the law against your own parents?" I opened the car door and stepped out, the sea wind carrying me forward. On the tiled walkway, all three of them locked eyes on me. Diana's glare burned, Howard's jaw clenched, Mason's smirk curled. "I told you," I said evenly. 7 days. Now it's over. This isn't talk anymore." Howard lunged forward, but the deputy blocked him. He jabbed his finger at me, his voice shaking with rage. "Traitor. After all this family has done for you, this is how you repay us?" I didn't flinch. "After all I've endured, this is how I protect myself." Diana's hand shook as she raised her phone, filming me. Her voice rang shrill. "Look, everyone. My daughter is throwing her own family onto the streets. She stole the roof from her parents and brother. This is the truth about an ungrateful child." I stared directly into the lens, my voice low and sharp. "Yes. And the world will know why." The deputies began escorting them out. Diana wailed dramatically, Howard cursed. Mason slammed his bag onto the floor, spitting insults nonstop. Neighbors peeked from doorways, whispering, gawking. I didn't lower my gaze. I let them all see the truth. I wasn't betraying them, they were being dragged into the light. 30 minutes later, the condo fell silent. I stepped inside. The air reeked of smoke and stale beer. The sofa was stained, the floor scuffed, but on the kitchen counter my ceramic mug still sat, cracked on the rim, the mark I'd always recognized as mine. My hand trembled as I picked it up. The place was tainted, yet I stood firm in the middle of the battlefield I had just reclaimed. By afternoon, a large envelope arrived, stamped with the logo of a law firm I didn't know. Inside, page after page struck me like blows. A lawsuit filed by Diana, Howard, and Mason. They accused me of illegally evicting family, causing severe emotional distress. They demanded $200,000 in damages and a restraining order. I let out a bitter laugh. Not enough, apparently. They went further, slandering me online. Diana uploaded a tearful video claiming, "Our own daughter abandoned us," heartlessly throwing her parents into the streets. Howard called neighbors, spreading tales of my supposed betrayal. Mason hit online forums, whining that I was wealthy but heartless. Within hours, my inbox overflowed with messages from strangers, branding me a monster. I read each one, my chest turning to ice. They wanted to paint me as the villain in front of the world. But they forgot one thing. I had prepared for every move. I placed the stack of papers on the table, inhaled deeply. Their play was clear. Now it was my turn to respond. On the day of trial, I walked into the Pinellas County Courthouse with a thick file in my hands and my heart pounding steadily. I wore a navy suit, the vintage silk scarf from my grandmother wrapped around my neck like armor. The courtroom was packed. Even a few local reporters showed up after Diana's tearful video spread online. At the plaintiff's table, Diana wore a long black dress, her face carefully made up as if cast for the role of victim. Howard sat stiff beside her, and Mason lounged back lazily, though his eyes glinted with defiance. They had hired a tall, thin attorney with a booming voice, clearly experienced in courtroom theatrics. The hearing began. Their lawyer stepped forward, his tone mournful. "Your Honor, today we represent elderly parents and a struggling son. They were cruelly forced out of their home by their own daughter, Clara Mitchell, suffering deep emotional harm. All they wish for is to live peacefully within the love of family." He gestured toward Diana. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, voice breaking. She threw us into the street. What kind of parents deserve that? Whispers rippled across the room. I sat silent, letting them finish their performance. Mason chimed in smugly. My sister is selfish. She values money over blood. She's a doctor, wealthy, while I'm barely scraping by. She could help, but she cast us aside. I clenched my file tighter, eyes fixed on the bench. When their lawyer finished, the judge nodded toward our side. Amy rose with confident poise, her voice cutting. Your Honor, the story you just heard is only half, and it's the half that's twisted. We have evidence that tells the truth. She glanced at me and gave a small nod. I stood, walked to the podium and laid out the documents. Your Honor, this condo was purchased solely by me, Clara Mitchell, with nearly 10 years of savings. Here are the purchase contract, wire transfers and tax filings, all in my name. I turned another page. And this is the original power of attorney my father, Howard Mitchell, abused to transfer ownership illegally. As you can see, it clearly states it was valid for only 6 months after signing, 8 years ago. By the time the condo was bought and titled, this document was worthless. The judge examined it, his expression tightening. Diana and Howard shifted uneasily. Mason muttered a curse under his breath. But that's not all. My voice sharpened as I looked directly at them. This is video I recorded inside my condo. The screen lit up. Crisp images showed Mason slumped in a chair, sneering, "You make money so I can spend it." Diana's voice rang, "You're just convenient." And Howard coldly declaring, "I signed for her, that's enough." The courtroom erupted, gasps, heads shaking, sighs of disappointment. The judge's gavel cracked for order. I continued steadily. This is not an ungrateful daughter. This is someone betrayed by her own family. I never wanted this public, but they forced me to protect the truth. Amy submitted more bank statements, Mason's overdue debts, loans my parents had hidden by funneling assets into his name. Each document struck like a blade, shredding their facade. Diana's face drained of color, her hands gripping the chair. Howard flushed crimson, half rising until the judge snapped. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Mason hunched low, unable to meet anyone's eyes. After an hour of evidence, the judge delivered the ruling. The plaintiff's complaint is dismissed. There is no proof of unlawful eviction. The claims for damages and restraining order are denied. The court recognizes Clara Mitchell as the sole legal owner of the condo. The gavel fell with a resounding crack, silencing everything. Diana slumped, eyes blazing with hatred. Howard's lips trembled wordlessly. Mason turned away, pale and defeated. I stepped out into the Florida sun, its warmth washing over me like a cleansing tide. I didn't smile, but the weight pressing on my chest had finally lifted. I stood still on the balcony of Unit 407, the afternoon sun turning Clearwater Beach into a blazing golden mirror. The waves still crashed relentlessly, but to me that sound was no longer the song of pride. It was the closing bell of a painful chapter. I had won in court, secured legal ownership. Yet looking around the condo scarred by Mason's presence and poisoned by Diana and Howard's malice, I knew this place would never again be my refuge. For a week I walked every corner, recording memories. The blue sofa was still there, though the fabric was torn. The kitchen cabinet still stood, but smoke clung to every surface. When I touched the walls, they felt icy. Even scrubbed clean, the ghosts of betrayal lingered. I whispered to myself, "Clara, you don't need to hold on to a place that hurt you this much." The next day I called a real estate company in St. Petersburg and met with a broker named Rachel. Within 2 meetings the condo was listed. Estimated price, $480,000. A figure I once thought impossible, now empty of pride. When Rachel asked, "Are you sure you want to sell? The view here is rare." I smiled, my voice firm. "I'm not just selling a condo. I'm selling the last burden." As the paperwork moved forward, I thought of my grandmother, the one who quietly gave me checks to help with the down payment years ago. She had told me, "Clara, use this place to stand tall, but don't let it cage you." I felt her smile from afar, urging me to let go. When the sale closed, my bank account lit up with the transfer. But instead of dreaming of vacations or a new car, faces of patients filled my mind. Single mothers who lost homes to medical bills, retired men who couldn't afford lawyers. I thought of myself, desperate once against a scheming family. An idea took root. Create a community legal fund, a place where those crushed by family or circumstance could find help. I called Amy Collins, the lawyer who had stood by me, and asked her to be the legal advisor. Amy laughed softly, eyes bright. "Clara, you're not just out of the dark. You're turning pain into light for others." We named it the Freedom Anchor Fund in honor of my grandmother, and as a reminder that everyone deserves a steady place in life. I invested $250,000 from the condo sale as seed money, keeping the rest for my future. At the launch in Tampa's community hall, the room was full. I stepped to the podium, still wearing my grandmother's scarf around my neck. My voice trembled slightly, but my gaze was steady. I once thought a home was the only way to be recognized. I was wrong. What I needed was freedom, not approval from a toxic family. Today, I'm not just telling my story. I want to give others the chance to stand and say, "I matter." Thunderous applause rose. I looked around and saw empathy in so many eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. A month later, Diana was still online defaming me, Howard calling relatives to label me ungrateful, Mason disappearing into debt somewhere. But strangely, none of it scared me anymore. I had stepped out of their spiral. One evening, I returned to Clearwater Beach, not to look at Unit 407, but to face the vast ocean. Standing barefoot in the sand, wind whipping my hair, I whispered, "I don't need their approval anymore. I have my own life." Tears fell, but they weren't bitter. They were release. I had found freedom, not in concrete walls but in my own heart. From now on, I would live for myself, not for anyone's judgment. The story of Clara reflects a very common truth. Many of us have sacrificed everything just to be recognized, only to be betrayed by our own family. What Clara discovered is that true self-worth does not lie in wealth or approval from relatives, but in the right to make her own choices and the strength to stand firm against injustice. In real life, we too can choose to let go of toxic relationships, reclaim our freedom, and use our strength to help others. That is the real meaning of happiness. What do you think about Clara's journey and her choice of freedom over family approval? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and dramatic stories about family life.